So we're here with Amelia with another story about World War II, and I believe you're going to be telling us a little bit about your great granddad. Amelia, I'm going to pass it over
Yes.
to you so you can tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yes. So my name's Amelia, and I'm just here to talk about my great granddad and about his time in the Second World War and sort of just bring him back to life a little bit so he can experience what he experienced. My granddad, unfortunately, I never got to meet him because he passed away before I was born, but I have this amazing collection of photos and diary entries that he had managed to keep during the Second World War and during his time that he served. So being here and being able to speak about that, I feel is so important to me because these people should never ever be forgotten, and it was such a dramatic event that we need to ensure that it never happens again. My granddad was he was called Leonard, and he fought in the Second World War. He actually fought just for the whole duration of the war. So he fought between 1939 and 1945. He enlisted in the RAF, and he actually enlisted quite late in the RAF. So he was actually about, I want to say, like 39 when he was enlisted. So he was actually quite older than the other men that enlisted. Um, and he was a navigator for the RAF. In the Second World War, he started in the UK, and then he moved over to Africa and to Italy. He actually flew in quite a lot of planes when he was in the Second World War. He started with a Boer fighter, and then he moved to Mosquitoes and Wellington planes, which I just think is amazing. He had a lot of knowledge because he was a navigator. Obviously, he was like sort of like the brains for the plane, and he had to make sure that everything went smoothly when they went on their flights. So in his diary entries, you can see like a lot of quick maths that he's had to do, and you can see that he's drawn um, like runways from memory. So yeah, I feel like he was a very important detail and very important in his squadron, and in the plane when they were fighting. He was actually part of Squadron 255. So that squadron was actually they were associated with nighttime attacks. So when the Germans would come and attack during the nighttime, it was their job to defend and take them out. And interestingly, his squadron shot down 6 enemy bombers within half an hour of a nighttime attack. And this was the most confirmed shoot down by a British squadron in the entirety of the Second World War. So like
That is
when I found
incredible.
that out, I know, like when I found that out, like it was legit like goosebumps. Like that is amazing. That was the squadron that my granddad was in. And in his diary entries, he talks a lot about shooting down like Germans, and he times it, and he talks about the fights and the artillery shells, and he just really likes to keep this detailed. And when I go through the diary pages, it's so amazing knowing that his fingers touch these pages, and now I'm touching these pages. So it just, I have a connection with it, and I'm just so thankful that I have these memories because I mean, we're in 2025 now, and it's been years since it happened. So it's just so amazing, and I treasure it so much to have this.
Looking at, I mean, even just like looking at those entries from the diary. I mean, for
Mm,
instance, you mentioned there about the drawings that he'd done of the
yeah.
runways, and it's just so beautiful to see how much detail he went into with
Oh
these,
yeah.
and you can obviously tell that he really prided himself on what he was
Mm.
writing. The writing in the diaries itself is just so beautifully written,
Yeah,
and
very old-fashioned writing.
very much so, very much so. It's just it's I'm looking at them here on the other screen, and it's yeah, it's absolutely amazing to have. And
Mm.
I mean, alongside obviously those diary entries, you've got some really beautiful photographs as well.
Yes, yeah. Some of these men in the photographs, I'm gonna be honest with you, I've no information on them. But they were very close, obviously, to my granddad because he spent a lot of time with them, especially living out in the desert. They had to sleep in a tent together, so they formed these really lovely bonds that they had together. And a lot of these men, they did actually come from around the world. So he had people from America, he had people from Canada, he had people that lived round the corner from him, and he had no idea. So it's just amazing how, you know, he had these friendships and these connections. And obviously, despite the circumstances, it was a little bit sad because obviously these men should not have been fighting a war. But they had each other, and I think that's what really held together the squadron. It was just like knowing that they had each other, a bit like a brothership, you know. um So yeah, my granddad was really close with these men, and in the start of his diary entry, he has all their names and their addresses and where they're from, and they've all got their own handwriting where they've written it in his diary. And I just think that's so beautiful. It's just a part of being human that we kind of forget that we have a little bit. And I've always considered like, oh, maybe we should reach out and maybe these people have pictures of my granddad, like I've got pictures of their granddad just sat in my home. But it's just one of those things that sometimes it's just going to be in a mystery. I'm never going to know about this person in the photograph, but they were very close with one another. And I just think that was really beautiful to have.
I think that was the first photo that you sent over, was that diary entry with all of their addresses and their names, and it's so beautiful seeing you've got Canada, America, I think it's New Zealand, I
Yeah.
think, or some of them. It's just incredible to
Yeah.
see the sort of where they've all come from around the world, and
Mm.
it's a really beautiful memory to have, and again shows, as you mentioned, that sort of that human side of the war. There's a few photos here, for instance. There's one that you've got of outside of the on the wing of a plane looking out. Maybe you could tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that.
So obviously flying in the air, my granddad didn't have a lot of fun. It was a bit boring sometimes, and it was a long journey. And I do believe that he carried a camera with him everywhere. I've got an old tin, a biscuit tin, absolutely full of photos because he just took pictures of everything. I've got pictures of him in the air. I've got pictures of him in Italy. And funnily enough, I don't have any pictures of him in Africa because I think that was really where the fight was. There are a couple of pictures here and there, but yeah, mostly in his uniform or with his squadron. And he just loved to take pictures. I think he just loved being in the sky and being above and just seeing, like the beauty of it. And he loved to take pictures of the destroyed planes as well. I think he took a bit of like pride in it as well because his squadron, from what we know about the nighttime attack, was actually like a really awesome squadron. So yeah, I think he took a lot of pride in that, and he had a wife to go home to, and he took these pictures, and now here we are, many years later, still talking about these pictures. So I just think it's really beautiful that we have that as well.
100%. I mean, yeah, they're absolutely beautiful, these, and I really thank you so much for sharing this story.
Yeah.
I mean, looking through some of them as well, there's also a great photo that you've got here of, I believe, is that your grandmother?
Yes, and
Yeah.
her friend, yeah.
And then obviously it is
Yeah.
the 80th anniversary today of VE Day, and I mean, what a great image to show of that 80
Yeah.
years ago of them celebrating.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful photo. And in fact, I have a picture of a diary entry where he talks about how it's VE Day. And obviously, I'm not too sure if he is away at the time, but he says VE Day in Europe, or like in England. And then just under that, you can see that he was actually promoted to corporal. So it was just really interesting to see how he's like had this written all down, and how maybe he thought about his wife back home, and maybe he misses her, so it's just really like soft, smushy stuff, but it's so important to our history and so important to have as well.
100%. I mean, if anything, probably you say that soft, smushy stuff, but that's probably is what has got him through the past
Oh,
6 years of
absolutely.
fighting. If he's been there since the beginning, that the fact that he's going to be able to
Mm.
go back home to his wife has probably been the thing that's got him through that. And it's
Yeah.
an absolutely beautiful memory to have. And I really do
Yeah,
thank
no,
you for sharing it with
absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. And yeah, he didn't, from what my dad said, he never really spoke about the war much. And I think in his diary entry he doesn't like to go into detail, but you can sort of pick out, some parts that just were not pleasant for him. He talks about losing people in the war. He talks about the artillery fire that went on all night and he couldn't sleep. So yeah, it's amazing to know that he survived and he came home, and just unfortunately he had those memories to live with. Um, but yeah, that's just war, I'm afraid.
That is indeed. Well, thank you for sharing. I don't know if there's anything as we come to the end of this interview.
Mm.
If there's anything you'd like to share or to sort of say to the viewers here on obviously the 80th anniversary of VE Day.
I think just to never forget and to always remember what war does to people and what it has and the consequences of it. I mean, we have held it loose to see how gruesome and how terrible war can be. But I think a bit like Hell Let Loose, it can bring people together and it can have that community. And that's always something that you need to remember, that despite the gruesomeness of the war, there's that humanity side of people coming together and becoming friends. And I think that's the most beautiful part of a war. A beautiful nightmare, I would describe it as.